Hello, welcome to my 3D Amuser channel. In this video tutorial, I'm going to cover basics of Zbrush. So we're gonna go through the user interface and how to navigate in Zbrush, and I'm going to go through the polymesh. Polymesh are the mesh you sculpt on it, and we're gonna go through the basic sculpting, how to access the brush, and I'm going to go through masking as well. And let's get started, guys. And I opened Zbrush here. I have Zbrush 4.7. There's a new version 4.8. You guys can download it if you want. So there is also a demo version available, so that will help you to go through it. So as soon as I open Zbrush, I usually go new document, so it gives me something. So in order to bring something in here, if you go here, these are the geo or the polymesh available here. So if you left click, it's going to pop up this menu. It's called quick pick, and there's 3 meshes and 2.5D brushes. So we're not going to go with this. This is the main menu we're going to cover through it. So as soon as I hit sphere 3D, so it's not going to pop up here. So you click and drag, so it gives something like that. So after this, still what you have to do, if you click on doing it, it doesn't do anything, right? So in Zbrush, so I'm hitting Control N to create a new document again. So if you click and drag, it's going to pop up here. Then as soon as you do, it's an edit object, or you can hit the T in your keyboard. Like if you go over here, you can see there's something pops up. It's called edit object, and it says T. That's a shortcut for doing that. So I'm hitting T. So now I have the sphere in my Zbrush document. So you could right click and rotate it around. You can see it's kind of rotating. You can see it. So if you want to see the sphere rotating, you can also see something called draw polyframe. Polyframes are nothing but how this object is created. So if I click on it, you could see. Now if I rotate it, you could see. So you could also use the left mouse as well. So both would do the same thing. So in order to move the sphere, you hold on Alt and you just do this. To zoom in and zoom out, you just hit Alt once and left mouse and click and drag. So you can go in and go out. It's kind of like going inside and outside. So to rotate, you do the same thing. To rotate, you use left or right mouse button, and you could use Alt to move it around. To zoom in and zoom out, you just hit Alt once and click somewhere outside the area, and you just let it go. You go in and go out. That's it. So you have to hold on to the left mouse, or else it won't work. So let's say you couldn't see the sphere now. I don't know, where is it, right? So if you hit F, it's kind of same as Maya, so it comes to the focus. And F is for focus, so it's easy to remember. So let's say I have a sphere like this. To snap the sphere in one angle, let's say I want to snap the sphere in this angle. So hold on Shift and do left click and snap it. So you could do the same thing, snap it. So it snaps to wherever the angle you want. So now we have a sphere. So we have something called standard here. So if I try to sculpt it, it doesn't let you to sculpt. There is something called to enable sculpting. Please convert this mesh to 3D primitive. So as soon as you grab 3D objects from here, the primitives from here, the 3D meshes, it doesn't let you to sculpt unless you go say make poly mesh 3D. So as soon as you hit it, you see it changed the color. So this telling Zbrush that I can sculpt on it. So now if I see, I'm just going through it, it's sculpting on it. So it's really good. And sometimes what I do, you can also change the materials of how are you viewing the images, like the objects. So what you have to do is, you see there's a matcap material, so you click on it. I usually start with basic material because it kind of pops up the polyframe, so I always like that. So the sculpting works based on subdivisions. So the more subdivisions you have, the smoother your sculpting will be. So it's like a basic 3D concept. So let's say I'm going to show you. So if I sculpt something, you see that's kind of blocky, right? So in order to subdivide your object, 3D objects, you go to subtool So subtools are the tools, which the tools you have in your scene. So I go to geometry because this is a geometry, so I'm going to geometry tab. I'm going to say divide. So as soon as I divide, you could see it's smoothing it up. So I'm going to turn off my polyframe so you can see it. So I'm going to the first division by clicking and dragging it to the lowest one. So I go to the second one, you can see it's smoother. So if I divide one more time, it's going to be smoother. One more time, it's going to be smoother. So now if I sculpt on it, it's going to be giving a good resolution to sculpt me on it. So you can see it's smoother. So I'm going to my lower subdivisions. So if I turn on my polyframe, you could see literally. So I'm clicking and dragging to subdivisions. See, it doesn't update it, but it's there. So what do? It just it once and hit it again. So now you can see the subdivisions. So if I hit 3, it doesn't show it. So if I hit 1, and you can also use a shortcut called Shift F. So if you hit it, you can toggle between it. You could do 4, so it's going to do the same thing. So from Shift F, you could see each of these polygons is divided into like 4 times. You can see this is split into 4 and this is split into 4. So that's what happening behind it. So if I go on a lower subdivision, so there is also a shortcut to go on lower and higher subdivisions. But if you hit D for divisions, it's easy to remember. So if you click on D, it's gonna keep on go to the higher subdivisions. So if you hit Shift D, it's gonna lower the subdivisions. So that's all about navigating and how to subdivide a mesh. And there is one more option. I'm going to delete my higher subdivisions. There is one more option called, you see, our subdivide smooth modifier is turned on. If I turn it off, so what it's going to, if I'm going to hit divide, it's going to maintain. I'm going to hit Shift F. So it's going to maintain all the jagged edges. So if I go 3, see, so it doesn't subdivide. So sometimes if your sphere or 3D objects, it's not subdividing smoother, so make sure it's turned on. So I'm going to delete higher. I'm going to say divide. So now we learned how to create 3D objects and how to subdivide and how to make it as a make poly mesh 3D. So now let's see how to append some more tools here, like how to add like some more 3D objects in my subtool. In order to do that, there's something called append. You can click on it and it's going to pop up the same menu which we popped up here. So if you right click, left click here, now right click here, it's going to pop up here. So it's the same thing we're going to do here as well. So if I go here and if I say append, and it's going to pop up. I think I changed my scene. So see, as soon as I hit like the sphere 3D, it created 2 more scenes. So I don't want that. So make sure it's going on here. So I went to my scene. So I'm going to say append. So I'm going to add cylinder 3D. So in order to go to this cylinder object, you just go and click on there. That's it. So now it also created, since we made our sphere as a make polymesh 3D, Zbrush understands when you bring in some 3D objects, it's going to be a 3D mesh as well. So if you sculpt on here, it's going to have the same thing. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to geometry, subdivide. So this is not going to subdivide because if I subdivide, it's going to have this smoother transition because there is no edge loop there, but I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to File. So I'm going to turn off my wireframe and you can sculpt on it. So now if you see the sphere 3D, it's popping out here. So in order to hide my sphere 3D, I could go literally, I could go and hide there's eye icon here. So if you click on it, it's going to be hiding the geo. If you do the same thing, if you go to sphere, it's going to hide this thing too. So I could switch it over. You can also have 2 objects by clicking on the eye icon. So now there is also some other option called solo. Solo means it's going to isolate my objects. Even though both are turned on, if I hit solo, it's gonna isolate my cylinder. So if I go to my sphere 3D, it's going to do the same thing. If I hit solo again, because this is not turned on, so I'm going to turn it on. So if I go to my sphere 3D and if I hit solo, it's gonna hide my cylinder. So there you go. You can also see it through by something called transparent. So if I turn this on, you can see it. It's literally showing that the sphere is inside my cylinder. So now you could see the cylinder is inside my sphere. So there's also something called ghost. This will help you to see the 3D objects clearly. So if I go here, so same thing. And yeah, so that's all for 3D objects. So now what we're gonna do, oops, sorry about that. So now we learned the basic user interface, and we learned how to navigate, and we learned how to bring in the polymesh. So now I'm going to show you how to do basic sculpting in Zbrush. So here I have my sphere, so I'm hitting Zbrush, and the great thing about Zbrush is it has unlimited undos. When I say undos, you can literally click. Do you see like there is some kind of like a dotted panels here? So you can literally go in all the way back. It goes all the way back. It's kind of like a life history. So I'm gonna, if you want to delete all this history, if you click on something and it's gonna say, oh, the current undo history is not at least one. So you click OK. So it's gonna delete all of the stuff. So now we have a clean sphere. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna divide it several times. So we are in third subdivisions now, so you can see it here. So I'm gonna delete lower. So now let's do basic sculpting. So in order to sculpt something, by default there is something called standard brush. You could see it here. It says current brush standard. And what you could do, there's also something called stroke, and there's alpha. So I'm going to go through everything, the brush panel first, then the dots, the stroke, then alpha. Okay, let's go through the brushes. To access different brushes, you could hit lightbox. So it's gonna pop up all those things here. You can go to brush, and you can literally go and see all the brushes here Zbrush has. So you can see you can do a slice. There's a slice brush, and you can go back. And so this is kind of really complicated to access the brush. So I'm hitting lightbox again. So in order to grab different brushes, you can hit B for brush. It's easy to remember. So if you hit B, so it's gonna pop up this brush menu for you. So there's a quick pick. This is like the most commonly used brushes you have used, so it's gonna pop up here. There are the brushes here. These are all the brushes in Zbrush. There is also some brushes here. It won't be there, but still you could like literally go and check it out. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm hitting a lightbox here, so I'm hitting B to see my brush. So now I could literally go and access my brushes here. So if I hit clay brush, and if I sculpt, it's gonna do the clay brush. I love clay brush, and if you see, I'm keep on sculpting it. So there is also something called symmetry in Zbrush. All 3D softwares have symmetry. In order to turn on symmetry, you can hit X. So that's going to have symmetry on X. So you could also go and change symmetry here if you go to the transform options. So whenever you go any menu here, so if you do you see like there's some kind of like a on button here, if you click on it, it's going to dock it up for you here. So if I say Y, so now X and Y are turned on, so it's going to have both symmetries on. And if I hit Z, it's going to have all three axes. You can see it's also doing it at the same time. So you can literally make something, you know, you can sculpt 4 ways. So that's symmetry. So I'm gonna do just X. You could also do radial symmetry. So radial, what it does, it's gonna give radial symmetry. If you see, you can literally see it. Okay, I'll do this here. So you see, you could also reduce the count. So that's like 22. And you can literally make like certain shapes, like a sci-fi, like a sphere. There you go. And you could turn it off by clicking here. And so let's go through the basic sculpting options. There is something called Z-add and Z-sub in ZBrush. So Z-add is nothing but you're adding sculpting, you're adding clay on top of it. I'm just hitting Control Z to go back so you can see it. So by default Z add is turned on, so if you click, it's going to keep on adding it. It's going to keep on adding clay on top of it. So if I go Z sub, it's going to be going in. So you're subtracting the clay, then adding a clay. And let's go here. So I'm going to be Z add. So if you see, my meshes kind of like get wonkier. To smooth, you can hit shift. By holding on shift, you could smooth it by holding on left mouse button, so you can do it. You could also use tablet. It's really easier if you use a tablet. For demo purpose, I'm using my mouse, and you hit and you just go and smooth it. You could do at any point of time. I'm adding some clay, I'm hitting shift, and I'm just smoothing it. If I'm doing anything like that, I'm smoothing it. You can also increase the intensity, how much clay it can add on your 3D object. Let's say the Z intensity is 50, so if I say 100, you would, okay, this is, do a dot, that's 100. So if I go 3, so do you see the difference between this and this? It depends upon the intensity. Okay, so I'm going to go on my standard brush. So in order to, if you know the names of the brush, it's easier, because if you hit B and the standard starts with S, so if I hit S, so the brushes all starts with S going to pop up here. It's not going to show up all the brushes. It's going to show up only the brushes which starts with S. So if I hit S, so that's my standard brush. So I'm just sculpting on it. So now you can see the intensity really good. That's 25. So if I go 100, you could see like there's a difference here, right? So you could also increase the brush size by hitting S for sizing, or else you could do it here as well. So if you have a bigger brush, and it's going to do that, and if you have a small brush, it's going to do that. So it depends upon your brush size. So the dynamic, there is something called dynamic brush. So once you add that, it's going to add the same size wherever you go. So if I zoom in, see all the strokes I'm painting on it having the same brush size. So let's do without dynamic. Let's see what it does. So I have this, and if I go here, I think it's turned on. Okay, it's turned off. So if you see here, when I zoom out, this changes my brush size. If I zoom in, it's gonna have a different because what dynamic doing is, like, even if you zoom out or zoom in, it's gonna maintain the brush size. That's what it does. And it's kind of wonky now, so I'm going to just smooth it, or you could literally click and go and go back. So now we learned how to add adding and subtracting clay from a 3D object, as well as like smoothing by holding down shift and left mouse. I'm clicking OK. So as soon as I hit shift, you could see the RGB is turned on. I'm going to show you what is RGB for. RGB is literally used for painting on your 3D objects, but I will have a separate tutorial for this, for texturing in ZBrush, so look for it. And so now we learned how to access brush and everything. Let's say there are a lot of brushes, so you can literally go and pull it up, and you could also have a clay build, and you hit B to access any brush here. You could also assign shortcuts for your brushes. I also have shortcuts for my brushes. In order to assign shortcuts in ZBrush, any tool, what you have to do is, I'm going to show the standard brush. So you hold down Control Alt and click on the brush. So if you see at the top, it pops up here. I think as soon as at the top, you could see press any key combination to assign custom art key. So now I'm going to hit 1. So my art key is assigned 1 to standard brush. So if I hit 1, so see, okay, I'm going to select a random brush. So if you see, this different brush, and if I hit 1, it's gonna turn down to standard brush. So it's that fast. So you can assign any kind of shortcuts to any of the brushes, as well as the tools. So I'm going to show in a tool too. Let's say polygroups. Okay, let's pick something. See, when you hover over any tool, it's going to say group visible polygons, and it's not showing the shortcut. So as soon as I hit Control Alt and click on it, and I would say, let's say Control Alt G. So that Alt key is assigned to it. So if I go to group visible now, it's going to say Alt Control G. So that's easier to remember the next time you do it. So now let's go through the stroke menu. If I hit the stroke menu, you can see there's dots, drag rect, freehand, color spray, drag dot. So these are the options available for the strokes, and let's go through it. So I'm going to go through the stroke, then I'm going to call it a day, because I'm going to do a second part. I'm going to go through the alpha and texture and masking. So the dots, okay, let's start with freehand. Like whenever you access a brush, the default is freehand. Freehand is nothing but like you could literally sculpt on anything. Like you do freehanding, like you don't worry about it, you just do whatever you want. So if I go drag rect, so you see I'm just clicking and dragging and it's creating the shape for me. So what it does is like it takes alpha. There is no alpha here for now, but standard brush has alpha in a brush, so that's where it's popping. Let's say if I'm going to grab alpha, so if I click and drag, so it's going to use this shape and drag it. You could also go in by holding down Alt, or else you go to Z sub, and you can do the shortcut for Z sub is holding down Alt. So it can be in Z add, and if you hold on Alt, it will work on any menu, even sculpting, even doing anything. So if you see, I'm just clicking and dragging it. So you can literally take any shapes, and I could do that. Since my intensity is high, it's popping out, and I don't have enough resolution in my geo, that's why it's doing it. So now you could see, you could also do, I'm holding down Alt to go in, so if I'm not holding down Alt, it's going to come out. So there you go. And I'm going to turn off my alpha. So now I'm going to do dots. So dots are nothing but, so if I'm grabbing alpha, so dots are nothing but it creates the dots, as it says. There you go. You can see if I'm turn off the dot, there you go. So do you see the difference between the dots and the brushstroke between the dots and freehand? That's what it does. And the color spray is for painting something, but I will have a different tutorial for texturing in Zbrush, so I'll go through it. Same thing as spray. And drag dot, it's like my favorite tool. Sometimes if you're creating any kind of like mechanical objects, and if you want to add some bold details, this will be really useful. Let's say I'm going to tag this alpha, so I can literally drag and dot. So I can, you know, it works based on the normal of your 3D object. So if I hold on sub, it's going to do that. I can also increase the intensity, and it's going to react the same way it does. So I'm gonna, so here see, it kind of looks like, you know, you're adding bold details. So I'm gonna, I just increased my subdivision. So if you see, it creates a really good. Then after that, I go and smooth it. Now it has like a punched hole in my geo. Then I could do add, and I can reduce the size, and I could do this. So you could see I'm literally, what I'm doing is just adding and subtracting. That's what I'm doing. So drag dot, what it does, it just drags some dots. Like it works on any alpha you have here, and you can also create your own alpha from Photoshop and bring it in. That works as well. So now if you see, I have this alpha. Boom. So now we learned how to do the strokes. So this is my final chapter of this part of ZBrush basics, and the next part I'm going to go over through alphas, and we're going to learn about masking, and I'm going to show you some other few techniques and how to use shortcuts to make your workflow faster. Until then, thanks for watching this tutorial. And if you like this tutorial, please like, subscribe, and comment below. If you have any questions, please write me at 3damuser@gmail.com. And until then, I'll see you in the next one, guys.